This video is brought to you by box.co.uk, Birmingham-based retailer that stocks over 50,000 products that are supplied throughout the UK. Hello everyone, this is Imran from Gaming Till Disconnected, and in this video we're looking at the LG 27MU67 4K UHD IPS Monitor. This is the LG 27MU67 4K UHD monitor. Aimed at gamers, it has a price tag hovering around £390 in the UK and about $500 in the US. Included in the box, you can expect to find the two components that make up the stand, along with their screws. A HDMI cable, a mini DisplayPort to regular DisplayPort cable, the power cable, which is a standard kettle lead, the usual literature, and the utilities and drivers CD for the screen split and the dual controller apps. As the entire unit comes dismantled, you'll need to attach the stand to the monitor, which is an easy task. The 27MU67 has a simple design. The front panel is framed by a 20mm border with a subtle brush texture. Along the bottom of the border, we have the LG logo in the center and markers for the buttons aligned to the right and a status LED, under which we have the touch buttons to control the monitor, but we'll come back to the buttons in a bit. Let's first take a look at the back of the monitor, where we have the LG logo engraved into the chassis at the top, and a grooved vent that almost circles the entire back, stopping for the I/O ports, where the chassis dips in. As for the I/O ports, you're given two HDMI ports, one DisplayPort, one mini DisplayPort, and a 3.5mm audio out port on one side, and the power connector and power switch on the opposite side. Finally, on the back, there's a 100mm VESA mount that can be used to attach the monitor to pretty much anything, from the supplied stand to a desk arm or a wall mount. In terms of dimensions, the monitor itself has a width of 643mm, a height of 381mm, and a depth of 55mm without the stand. Once you include the stand, you have a depth of 250mm and a variable height from as low as 430mm to as high as 560mm in the landscape profile. Or, if you prefer a portrait profile, you can rotate the monitor 90 degrees clockwise, which gets you a height that ranges from 655mm at its shortest to 695mm at its tallest. Elevating the monitor is actually effortless, thanks to what I assume is a spring-loaded or gas lift mechanism inside the stand. But although lifting the monitor is easy and buttery smooth, lowering it can require a little effort for the initial push down. But after the initial push down, you will need to adjust your pressure, otherwise the continued force will just slam it down. Staying on the subject of the stand, you can rotate the monitor 90 degrees to switch between the two profiles. Although if you intend to switch between landscape and portrait frequently, ensure that you have enough slack in the cables connecting to the monitor. And in case you were hoping that the screen orientation would automatically change when you physically rotate the monitor, I'm afraid it doesn't, so you'll have to change it the old-fashioned way. As well as being able to rotate the monitor 90 degrees, the stand also allows you to tilt the monitor about 5 degrees towards you and about 35 degrees away from you, as well as swivel the screen about 45 degrees to the right or 45 degrees to the left. Although if you'd rather have a desk arm do all this movement, just be sure that it can support the monitor's weight of 5.5 kilograms. Now, for the main feature of the LG 27MU67 monitor, the 27-inch IPS panel. And it's a pretty gorgeous display. It has a viewing angle of about 178 degrees, of which I found that the colours stay sharp without any noticeable bleeding, even at the extreme ends of the viewing angle. In terms of colours, the 27MU67 is marketed as a 10-bit display panel, but is actually an 8-bit display panel with frame rate control, which LG say will be able to simulate a 10-bit colour spectrum, essentially producing over 1 billion colours. But like I said in the LG 34UC97 review, whether you'll actually be able to distinguish all these colours is not for me to say. As this is aimed at the consumer market as opposed to the professional market, it has a resolution of 3840 by 2160. With this resolution and a physical screen size of 27 inches, the 27MU67 has a pixel density of 163 pixels per inch, and provided you have high definition content to view, or content that's not been scaled up improperly, the monitor provides a very sharp image. However, there are some points you should be aware of, especially when it comes to using the monitor for general use, like browsing the web or word processing. essentially anything where text is involved. Due to the monitor's physical size, you'll find that you'll have to do a bit of scaling to make text readable. This seems to be a common problem amongst these sub 30-inch 4K panels, at least with Windows anyway. As for watching movies and videos, provided you have access to 4K content, the experience can be great. But trying to find 4K content online at this point in time can be troublesome. In particular, movies and TV shows. The most familiar places to find 4K content online are Netflix, Amazon Instant Video, and YouTube. Although with the two former platforms mentioned, you will need to pay a premium to access the content, but the selection available is minuscule. Even still, you'll need a decent internet connection to be able to stream this content. Amazon suggests a minimum internet connection speed of 15 megabits per second, while Netflix requires at least 25 megabits per second. Although when viewing Breaking Bad and Daredevil on Netflix at 4K, I required up to 37 to 39 megabits per second. This was a similar situation when watching Extent and Man in the High Castle on Amazon. As for YouTube, I required up to 32 megabits per second. However, with videos like Linus Tech Tips, where there isn't too much color or frame change going on, you'll be able to get away with about 25 to 27 megabits per second. To put that into perspective, a 1080p video on YouTube will require about 12 to 16 megabits per second. On that note, 1080p content doesn't look bad at all. Watching 1080p movies in full screen is still enjoyable. A little soft, yes, but still enjoyable. I would say most videos are watchable on this monitor down to 720p at full screen, but you can definitely tell the difference in quality. Now for gaming. To get the most out of this monitor, you really need to have the right setup. I would say you need at least a 980 Ti or equivalent, preferably in an SLI or Crossfire configuration, with the aim of achieving 60 frames per second while gaming, since this is a 60Hz monitor, and anything more may result in screen tearing. For older and less demanding games, you should be fine with a single 980 Ti. And for the purpose of this review, we tested the monitor with the MSI GTX 980 Ti. If you want to check out the full review for that card, then click on the card on the top right or the annotation here. And just to make it a little more convenient, there's also a link in the description. Back to the monitor review. I was able to play Titanfall with all the settings turned up and still produce 60 frames per second. However, when trying to play Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I had to turn the graphics settings down to normal to hit our target frame rate. For newer titles like GTA 5, I had to turn the graphics settings down to somewhere between what we refer to as medium and low to hit 60 frames per second. Whereas with Witcher 3, I had to set it to medium graphics and low post-processing to meet the same threshold. Just so you know, with Witcher 3 and 1980 Ti at 4K, if you wanted ultra graphics and high post-processing, you would only be getting 34 to 35 frames per second. While that frame rate is playable to a certain extent, fast-paced action proved challenging and unenjoyable. So for demanding titles, you'll need a multi-card setup. And here I used our two GTX 980s, which allowed me to get 60 frames per second on Assassin's Creed Black Flag at the highest graphics settings. If on the other hand you're using AMD cards, more specifically anything past the 200 series, then you should be able to take advantage of FreeSync, which is found on this monitor, and that should address the issue of screen tearing. Unfortunately, at the time of this video, we didn't have any AMD cards to hand to test this feature, but we are getting some very soon, so expect an update video in the near future. As well as gaming and general use, I also got the chance to do some video editing on this monitor. Once again, this isn't a professional grade monitor, so for that reason I wouldn't recommend it for any commercial project, especially where color representation is important. But for YouTube videos, this will suffice. That being said, for video editing, I still prefer the LG 34UC97, which we looked at not so long ago. What I mean by that is, all that extra real estate you would have achieved with a 4K monitor is somewhat lost due to the scaling needed to make this monitor usable. This isn't to say you can't do it, but I need something where I can read the text. As I said before, this is most likely to be a common issue found in these physically smaller 4K UHD monitors. Another issue I found with this monitor is the small amount of light bleeding in the corners. But if you don't go looking for it, then you may not notice it. It's only noticeable when the monitor is all black. Personally, this didn't affect my overall experience with this monitor. As I mentioned earlier, you have two HDMI ports, a mini display port and a display port, all supporting 4K input at 60Hz. But something that could be seen as a negative by some is the lack of USB ports, especially if you're the type of person who likes to keep their tower on the floor. It just means that you'll have to have a separate USB hub in the event that your cables aren't long enough to reach your case. I should also mention there are no built-in speakers on this monitor. Just to make it clear, this is not a complaint, but more a public service announcement. And from experience, built-in speakers aren't always the best and they can drive up the price, so I'm not very fussed in this situation. However, something that did annoy me is the control interface, which in this model comes in the form of sensors, touch sensors, although the marketing material will refer to them as touch buttons. This is important to note because it leads to several frustrations that I found with this implementation. First, you have to find the sensor you're looking for, and this is aided by the markers on the front of the panel. But these sensors, which are located underneath the display, are fairly sensitive, so any slight hover over the wrong sensor will register as a press. And this is easy to do as you don't have an immediate line of sight to the sensors themselves. This wouldn't be so bad if these were actual physical push buttons, where you can feel around for the right button. But in this case, you can't leave your finger hovering near the sensor for too long, for the reason I stated earlier. For example, I would often adjust the tilt of the monitor depending on what I'm doing, usually by grabbing the two bottom corners, but on most occasions when I did this, I would usually end up turning the monitor off, until of course I forced myself to hold the monitor differently. This is probably the most annoying aspect of this monitor, and I'm not sure why LG went against the joystick method, which we found on the 34UC97, because that interface was extremely well implemented and easy to use. On the plus side, there are some useful hotkeys, i.e. you can quickly change which display input is active, and if you have audio coming out, you can adjust the volume, provided of course you don't touch the wrong sensor. As annoying as the sensors are, the menu system itself is easy to navigate, and the layout has remained the same since the 34UC97, and as I said in that review, you can go into quite a bit of depth when modifying the settings. Also, if you find yourself making any mistakes, there's a handy reset option, which will cancel any changes you've made. Once again, the LG split screen software makes an appearance. This enables the screen to be divided into 2, 3 or 4 quadrants, as well as being able to adjust the size of each quadrant in most cases. For the most part, this is a useful feature, allowing you to utilize the screen's real estate to maximize productivity. I once again found myself using the three-way split screen most frequently, and in doing so I was able to write up my reviews, have my notes open and keep a tab on my emails. Although my grievances with this feature have not changed since my last LG monitor review, where I stated I didn't like that it always resized each window to the size of the quadrant it was hovering over. I would have preferred if I could have retained the size of said window when I was moving it instead of it automatically resizing, and only resize the window to the relevant quadrant when I snapped it into position, similar to how Windows' own native split screen function works. Although if the split screen function isn't for you, then you do have the option of turning it off, or just not downloading the software, as it's not required for the functionality of the monitor. While the LG 27MU67 may not be as aesthetically pleasing as say the 34UC97, it is incredibly functional, and since the main purpose of the monitor is to display content, I wouldn't get too hung up on its looks. This leads me onto the display quality, which is great for high definition content, but because this has such a high pixel count, low resolution video and images can look soft. This monitor really shines when displaying 4K content, whether it's films, YouTube videos or gaming. On the subject of gaming, while you can play at medium settings or low settings while at 4K, I'm not quite sure why you'd want to with this monitor, as you lose all that detail, which you explicitly got this monitor to show off, I assume. For that reason, I really recommend that you have a high-end system to take full advantage of 4K gaming. I previously mentioned that this is not a 10-bit display, but rather an 8-bit display with frame rate control, thus allowing you to simulate 10-bit color. But if true 10-bit color representation is important to you, then this might not be the monitor for you. However, for the average consumer and most gamers, I'm not sure how big an issue this would be. Let me know in the comments below if this is something that would bother you. As easy as the menu system is to navigate, the actual physical interface obstructs the ease of use. I really think LG made a mistake in replacing the joystick system with these touch sensors. I thought maybe LG have reserved the joystick system for their professional line, but I've seen it implemented in some of their consumer models, so I'm at a loss with this design choice. That being said, once you have all your desired settings, then you can pretty much forget about the sensors, until of course you need to change your settings once again, for whatever reason. This is a pretty darn good monitor, at a very competitive price at the time of this review. Although this is meant to be used with AMD cards, there's nothing really stopping you using it with an Nvidia card. It just means that you won't be able to utilize FreeSync. Speaking of which, an equivalent G-Sync 4K monitor is a fair bit more expensive. If you have the right setup, and you want to game at 4K or watch 4K movies and TV shows, as small as that selection might be, this monitor is a great option. Let us know your thoughts on this product in the comments below. Thank you for watching everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you did, then please give it a like and share it. If there's anything we can do differently, then let us know in the comments below. And if you're not already, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram to be notified when we upload a video. Or better yet, why not sign up to our mailing list? Thanks to box.co.uk for sponsoring this video. If you're in the UK, then you should definitely check them out for all your computer needs. They have a great selection of PC products with a great customer service to match. If you're outside the UK, then please continue supporting us by using our Amazon affiliate links, which can be found in the description below. Or if you just want to buy us a coffee, then head over to our support us page. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good day and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.